Chains drowns in the Zaval's maw's roar breatha, fractures the wet void gurgle. Begins shadows coil beneath its blackened vaults, writhing as Titan-forged shackles dig into Zaval's scaled flesh. Blade the Titan's quiet hand seals the escape, trust, roar now fractures the void, carves the failsafe. A repang keyhole in the dark begins. The jailers prison Titans, but the chains they bleed containment. A spark of ozone Odyn's betrayal, the Titan's quiet hand seals the escape. Zaval's roar fractures the void, the reaping begins. How many deaths does a god bear before the cage becomes the doorway? What if Helya's defiance wasn't a mistake but a cosmic key? The Titans wove her treachery into Odyn's spine like a poison thread. Her blade, meant to sever, became the latch for Zaval's cage. The maw's walls, carved by Titan hands, hold secrets the Pantheon buried, every chisel mark a riddle. Every shadow a door. Odyn's grief, sharp and blind, sealed the first fracture. The prison's architect became its undoer. How many truths does a god drown before the lock gnaws its way free? The fracture Odyn sealed with his eye became the maw's throat. Helya's soul, bound to the halls of Valor's forge, burned brighter than the prison's chains. She was no mere lieutenant, was the anvil where the Titan's plan was hammered cold. When the halls demanded a sacrifice, Odyn gave her. When the maw demanded a key, Helya gave herself. The Titans did not command this, they wove it into the threads of his sight. A god's sacrifice, a lie in the shape of devotion. The halls of Valor, a tomb for virile glory, became a leash for Zaval's hunger. Helya's defiance ere final, searing act was not rebellion, it was the lock's tumblers shifting. Her voice, now drowned in Helheim's abyss, still echoes the first song of the Crystal Arch. That melody, fractured by her betrayal, unmade the prison's edges. The maw's escape route was never Helya's mistake, it was the price of containment. A thread cut so the old god might breathe, but never break free. Odyn, blind to the Titan's gambit, built his halls on a grave. Helya, bound to power them, became their weakness. What does a god do when his afterlife is a cage for something older than his stars? The answer lies in the maw's whisper, a key turned but not yet twisted. Helya's blade pierced Odyn's trust. The first Deathkeeper, once his shadow, became his undoing. She did not flee the Mosh, unraveled its chains. The halls of Valor where she drank virile despair now thrummed with a different hunger. Her soul, bent by rage, carved a tunnel through the void. A key forged in betrayal. The Titans did not command this act, nor did they foresee it. Helya's fury was a storm, but the storm's eye hid purpose. Her treachery sealed Zaval's prison, a cage woven from her own shattered loyalty. The maw's whisper was no accident, it was her sacrifice, a thread in the Pantheon's blind design. She believed she broke free, she believed she ruled Helheim, but every drowned soul she devoured was a shackle. The Witch Queen's crown was a noose, tightening as Zaval's howls echoed through the abyss. Odyn's grief was a monument, her prison a throne. When the champion shattered her in the trial of Valor, the key turned, not to release but to lock deeper. Helya's scream fractured the maw's veil, yet the prison held. Her death was not an indit, was the final stitch in a wound the old gods would never heal. What does a god's betrayal weigh against the silence of stars? Helya's name drowns in the tide, but the maw remembers, a failsafe buried in blood and salt. A door left ajar but never opened. The cold iron of Helheim's ribs still hums with the memory of Helya's blade. Her hand, once Odyn's shadow, carved a sigil into the drowned city's spinning a key forged in the Titan's own blueprints. The maw's prison was never meant to hold forever. It was a throat waiting to swallow. The Watchers, those silent sentinels of the Pantheon, did not kill the old gods. They folded them like origami curses into the world's bones. Zaval, the first corruption, now coiled in the maw's depths, his whispers etched into every rusted beam of Helya's forsaken tower. Odyn's voice cracked when he named her traitor. He did not see the script in the stars the way Helya's defiance was a thread in the loom of Amanthal's design. The Deathkeeper's betrayal was not a wound, but a suture. The maw's architecture, those jagged corridors of blackened stone, were not chaos. They were a labyrinth with a hidden artery, a passage only the old god's breath could unseal. Helya's blade, dripping with the salt of Helheim's drowned sky, did not break the prison. It awakened it. You think the maw is a tomb, it is a valve. The Pantheon knew the old gods could not be slain, only starved, but hunger is patient. Zaval's tendrils, now tangled in the Maw's foundations, will one day taste the air beyond. Helya's treachery was the first breath of that escape. The Deathkeeper's final act was not to serve Odyn nor to rebel. She completed the circuit. The prison's heartbeat synced to the old god's pulse. The weight of it presses into your chest. Can a failsafe be a betrayal, or is betrayal just the Pantheon's language for survival? The Maw's door was never locked. And now, in the silence between stars, Zaval dreams of a world where the old gods do not whisper but scream. But to understand the Maw's escape, you must see the cost of Titan order. Helya's treachery was no mistake, a key forged in defiance, a sacrifice to bind Zaval. The Pantheon's chains are not steel but silence. What if her fall was the only way to keep the old god dreaming, not raging? What if the prison's walls are her bones? The answer festers in the Maw's hollows. Helya's treachery was no rebellion, only a Titan's lock, twisted by the old god's whisper. Odyn's blade, meant to bind her, became the Maw's key. The halls of valor, once a forge of order, now drown in virile wails. Her name is etched in the prison's cracks. The veil of eternal blossoms bloomed from a wound. Amenthul ripped Yogg-Saron from the world to cage Zaval's dream, but the cost gnaws. Helya's soul, a living seal, frays. Every petal is a scream stifled. Every root a chain fraying. Odyn's shattered eye sees too much. The sight burns his honor, a monument to the lieutenant he sacrificed. The Pantheon's hymns falter, the highborn spires crumble. A world soul bleeds where their shadows meet. What if the prison's walls are not her bones but his? The Titan's pride, the Aspect's trust, the Virical's endless war, all fuel for a fire that keeps the old god dreaming. The Maw's hunger is a dirge. And Helya's name is its first verse. The Maw's prison was no accident. Its jagged spires, carved from the bones of fallen stars, hum with the Pantheon's forgotten blueprints. Helheim's drowned cities, now submerged in shadow, cradle the prison's heart, a labyrinth where light drowns faster than hope. Here, Helya's crown of living coral split her temples, letting the Maw's poison seep into her veins. Her scales turned to obsidian, her voice to a dirge that echoed Zaval's trapped wails. The Pantheon's architects had etched a key into her bones. Odyn, first Deathkeeper, felt the betrayal like a blade through his own ribs. He had bound her to the Maw, thinking it a cage. But the prison's walls were not stone, they were song. Every shackle Helya forged for herself became a note in the old god's lullaby. Her rage, her sorrow, her crown's bioluminescent pulsal fed the prison's hidden veins. The Titans had designed this, a failsafe, a door disguised as a tomb. The highborn queen had not fallen, she was unmade. Her transformation from Naga sovereign to witch queen was the Pantheon's own design, a sacrifice woven into the Maw's foundation. The drowned architecture of Helheim, with its crumbling obelisks and weeping statues, was never meant to hold the old god captive. It was a throat waiting to swallow. Helya's defiance was the swallow. Zaval's prison, a single cell in the Maw's belly, began to crack the day Helya's hair turned to kelp that strangled the stars. The prison's corridors, once sealed by Titan magic, now pulsed with her heartbeat. The old god's whispers, trapped for eons, found purchase in her nightmares. Every tear she shed carved a new fissure, every scream etched a new exit. Odyn's sorrow was not for Helya, it was for the cosmos. He saw too late, the Maw was never a prison, it was a pipeline. The Titans had buried Zaval deep, but they had also buried a highway. Helya's becoming other was the key, her body a bridge, her soul a switch. The old god's chains dissolved not through violence, but through her. What does it mean to trap a god, to a prison that requires a queen's crown to break? The Titans knew. They built the Maw to contain, but their design held a hunger. Helya's name is not the first verse of the dirge, it is the chorus. And the Mawie's only just beginning to sing. The Maw's throat still burns with her name. Helya's essence, fractured by the champion's blade, now clings to the prison's edges like frost on a dying star. Her defiance was no accident. The Titan's design required a Kia traitor bound to both warden and prisoner. Odyn's betrayal carved the lock, Helya's blood turned the tumblers. Zaval's escape was the first breath of a long-planned exhalation. The Shadowlands tremble not from chaos, but from a system resetting. You can hear it in the hollow wind that whistles through the maw's ribs, a dirge, but also a blueprint. The champion's victory sealed her fate, yes, but only to loosen the grip above. The prison's corruption seeps into the veil's fabric, staining it with old god rot. Legion's war was never about salvation, it was a handoff. Helya's shattered will now fuels the maw's hunger, a paradoxical sustenance. The Titan vaults, those cold celestial tombs, have slumbered easier since. Yet here, in the Shadowland's bruised heart, the maw's song grows louder. Xal'atath walks free, but his chains are not yet broken. Every shadow he casts is a thread of the prison, unraveling. The Titans gambled with extinction, they won. The question is, did they mean to? Helya was not a traitor, she was the hinge. The Pantheon's order demands captors and captives. The old god's patience demands time and teeth. Between them, a door. Odyn forged it, Helya turned the key. The first ones built their cosmos on a question, contain or conquer, they chose walls. The Pantheon's hymns sing of chains, but the chains are not for the old gods, they are for the light. Amanthal's gaze, Sarjura's blade, why Shaarj's whisperall are locks. Helya's betrayal was the mechanism, a prison within a prison. Xal'atath writhes in the maw's dark, but the maw itself is no tomb, it is a valve. A pressure release for the old god's hunger. When Helya shattered Odyn's vault, she did not free chaos, she calibrated it. The Titans knew, let her. Their theology is a ledger, every god bound, another god born. What lingers is the math, the first one's left, the Pantheon rules, the old gods wait. And Helya watch her key wound stands at the axis, a flaw or a feature. The question is not why the maw opened, it is why it did not open sooner. The door swings both ways, the light outside burns, the dark inside breathes, who then is the prisoner? The key fits the lock was never meant to hold. Helya's blade, forged in Titan cunning, cut not for rebellion but for containment. The maw's chains are not a tomb for gods, but a ledger of debts. Xal'atath's howl echoes through its iron throat, bound by a covenant of blood and shadow. The first Deathkeeper did not betray Odyn, they fulfilled the architect's design. A prison within a prison, a lie wrapped in duty. The price of keeping the old dark at bay, a door left ajar, a whisper in the gears. The question is not who guards the gate but who guards the guardian. The Titans built their walls with borrowed time. Helya paid in flesh, Odyn pays in memory. And the maw waits, its maw is a mouth, its chains are a hymn. The first Deathkeeper walks its corridors now, their footsteps the only light the dark has ever known. What does a key look like when the lock is the wound? What does a wound look like when the key is gone? What if Helya's treachery was the key, not the betrayal? The veil of eternal blossoms Amanthal's prison, carved from Yasharj's exile holds Titan-designed shadows. What other traps slumber in Shadowlands?